Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the huge game that went on in Athens, Georgia this past weekend. Georgia does get a huge win, likely punches their ticket to the CFP, barring any disaster. Tennessee, a little bit up in the air. Definitely some things that will have to do nothing with them. As long as they handle business, they're in as good a spot as they can be, and then might need a little bit of help here and there to get in, which I don't think they should, but that's a totally side point that we can get in throughout the week. But let's get into Oregon and Texas because they survived. As a number of other teams went down, Texas and Oregon were able to eke out some wins on the road. And we'll start with that Oregon game because this one was sketchy. And it felt like for a little bit in that second half, it really did feel like Oregon might actually fall. They might lose one. And then Big Ten would be a little bit more up in the air as you head into the final weekend. But they got away with one. No doubt about that. They gave Wisconsin a number of chances, including a really ridiculous decision to do a fake field goal at the very end. If you're going to go for it, put it in your best player's hands and Dylan Gabriel and call it a day. But at the end of the day, they were able to get away with one. They were able to get the pick and end it there. But the defense for Oregon was incredible in this game. It's been really, really good all year, but especially in this game, it just outright won it for them. But in my opinion, I think this was a big game for Wisconsin. Obviously, it wasn't the way that you wanted it to go by any means, but I think when you look at this game down the road, when you look at this game maybe next year or the year after that, I think you're going to see this game as a reason why Luke Fickell is still the right guy there. I know this season has not gone the way you wanted it to by any means. You've not gotten the wins that you wanted it to. You kind of have beaten everyone you're supposed to. You've lost to everyone that you're meant to. That's frustrating. It definitely can be, especially in the second year of a coach that you feel like is going to turn things around. This is proof that everything is still moving in the right direction. It might be moving a little bit slower than people want it to, but it feels like this program, this team is still moving in the right direction. They got a lot of things they need to figure out over the next couple of years, especially getting a big-time portal quarterback in this offseason. But at the end of the day, it feels like a program that's building. It still feels like a program that's heading in the right direction. Going to need a big-time moment. They're going to need a big-time win over the next, maybe the rest of this year into next year. But I don't know. I think Wisconsin got out of this game. Obviously didn't get the win that they wanted. I think they got plenty, especially this fan base knowing that this program, at the very least, is still heading in the right direction. Just a little bit slower than they might want it to. But for Oregon, they dominated the fourth quarter, and that's what championship teams do in a lot of different ways. They outscored them 10-0 in the fourth quarter. Wisconsin's offensive possessions in the fourth quarter went punt, turnover on downs, and interception for a grand total of 0 yards. It was absolute domination from the Oregon defense in that fourth quarter, and that was really important for Oregon in a number of different ways. They have 8 straight weeks of playing. They've been on the road 3 of the last 5 weeks at night at Camp Randall. Getting a win, even by 1 point, even by 3 points, is plenty. It was really ugly, but they got it done, and they move on the rest of the way. But this is a really remarkable performance from the Wisconsin defense as well, especially the back end deserves a lot of respect. Only 7 yards per attempt for Dylan Gabriel and only 3 explosive passes. So really, really good stuff. Obviously, not quite enough, but that defense did, frankly, plenty in this game. But how Oregon was able to get the win, the defense really finished this game in a lot of different ways. Multiple chances were given to the Wisconsin offense, and after a failed field goal even, they weren't able to get it done. They allowed 0 yards in the fourth quarter to Wisconsin, and were able to get that pick at the end from Mateo Uiagalelei. So really remarkable stuff from a defense that has been really good all year. I don't think they've outright won a game for them. They were able to do it in this one. So absolutely huge, and definitely gives you a good idea of just how good this team is and how complete they are on a number of different phases. But then you got the run game kind of picking up the slack. The pass game just didn't get going the way the Oregon pass game normally does. They avoided those big disastrous plays other than the pick from Dylan Gabriel early in the game, but Jordan James getting 121 and 25 carries on the ground was huge. It wasn't necessarily the best game on the ground by any means, but it definitely was one where you just keep the chains moving, you make things tough for this defense, and at some point they were able to break through. So it was a huge game where a lot of things went wrong in the offensive side of the ball in particular, and you were able to get through it. That's something that pretty much every championship team has to do at some point. And then composure, another thing that every championship team has at some point throughout the season. You're down 7 going into the fourth quarter. You get 2 long scoring drives. You play incredibly defensively, and you get a huge win. That's one of those things that obviously it is Wisconsin. It's not necessarily the biggest test they've had on their schedule, but it definitely is a win that they very badly needed. It definitely is a win that puts them in a really good position going forward, and it is a win that, at the very least, keeps them undefeated when a couple other teams fell off this past weekend. But where do they go from here? I think for Wisconsin, it's been a frustrating year, no doubt about that. I think you've beaten all the teams that you were meant to beat. You've lost all the teams that you were meant to lose to, and I can't imagine that's the way that Wisconsin thought this year was going to go. I think they thought that they were going to play a little bit better football, maybe get a win here or there that are going to be massive, whether it was Penn State at home or this one or maybe Ohio State. I feel like they felt like they were going to get one of them. They weren't quite able to. Now, wins over Nebraska, I believe they have Minnesota to finish. If they get those two, I think you got to feel really good. Obviously, 7-5 is not quite where you saw yourself going this year, but a lot of really tough losses, including that Penn State game and this game, and I think there's still a lot of juice around that program. They need to do a lot of things in the offseason to get that thing rolling, but this was a good prove-it spot just to prove that you're still moving in the right direction, at the very least. For Oregon, they get a much-needed bye week this upcoming weekend, so they get a little bit of time, and then they play a game that they don't need to win, but they very badly need to win. They have Washington at the end of the year, and especially after what happened last season, they're going to very badly want that. They are already in the Big Ten title, so nothing to worry about there. But barring anything crazy, they will be in the CFP one way or the other, whether that's as the team that gets the bye or as the team that's getting one of those home games at the end of the year. But they very badly want to win that Washington game. I can promise you that. But moving forward to Texas, Texas has become one of the more confusing teams in college football. They have the makings of an elite team. They put it together every now and then, including last week against Florida, but they just haven't quite been able to go over the ledge, really make those big-time plays down the stretch of a game to give them the win that they very badly needed. Now, they were able to do it in this one. It wasn't necessarily perfect by any means, and they got some things to figure out offensively, particularly when they play what is dubbed as a flyover defense, essentially playing three safeties really deep. They haven't been able to get it done. Even in running the ball, they haven't been able to get it done, and they're going to have to, one way or the other. They're going to have to get this run game going, and they're going to have to be able to pull guys in, because if they can't hit the big plays that make that team so special. They can't make the big plays that really change a game for them. But for all that bad stuff, for all the stuff that happened offensively that weren't perfect, the defense, like they've been all year, was downright incredible. 6 sacks on the day, multiple turnovers forced again, 9 tackles for loss. They were flying around. Jahdae Barron, in my opinion, locked up the Jim Thorpe on Saturday, and I think a lot of things went right for this Texas defense. But all of the different things that went wrong offensively, all of the different things that went awry and didn't necessarily go the way you wanted it to, they made a number of huge plays down the stretch of this game. They had 2 big-time drives, one that was all the way down the field, I believe 8 plays, 75 yards, and they were able to get the score on a perfect pass from Quinn Ewers that was really a perfect drive in a number of different ways. And then in the last drive, they went almost 7 minutes to drown the clock, win this game, and get out with a 10-point win. It was ugly, no doubt about that, but they were able to get it done, and winning on the road in the SEC, never an easy thing to do. But this is a team that has a really high floor, in my opinion, with the defense that they play, with the way that they're able to spread teams out. They absolutely can win a number of games not playing all that great of football like they did on Saturday. But they also have an incredibly high ceiling. They're playing a little bit closer to the floor right now. This offense not necessarily picking it up the way that they would want it to has kept them from doing what they can do in this offense and what they can do overall as a team. So this offense needs to find a run game. They need to find those deep balls, and if they can't, then it could just be one of those teams that finds their way to the SEC championship, loses to Bama, and then they're getting debated on Selection Sunday. But how they got this win, an elite defensive performance. I mean, it was absolutely remarkable to watch this Texas team go to work. I think it's the best defense in the country. Obviously, haven't played those high-powered offenses that a couple others have played, so a little bit, on the fence about that, but still playing really elite football. 6 sacks, an INT, a huge forced fumble from Alfred Collins, and just constant pressure on Taylor Green in this one. A really dominant performance when they very badly needed it. The offense finished in a lot of different ways. You had Arkansas get within 3 points. Texas responded with an 8-play touchdown drive and then a 14-play drive that ate up 7 minutes of the end of the game. So absolutely huge for this team, where you play really bad offense for about 3.5 quarters, but you finish when you need to, and that's absolutely huge for this team going forward. Then you contain Taylor Green. It's very, very hard to do that. A lot of teams have really struggled with his legs, but he only had -4 yards on 16 carries, including sacks, of course, but that took the run game pretty much entirely out of this game. Only 2.4 yards per carry for Arkansas, where that had kind of been the thing that they did. That was their bread and butter, and Texas was able to totally knock it down. But where do they go from here? I think for Arkansas, they're relatively hard to judge. This entire season has been hard to judge. They played A&M and Texas tough. They were able to beat Tennessee at home, and then they got blown out by LSU and Ole Miss. So it's really, really hard to figure out how good this team is or how successful this season was. They have Louisiana Tech and Missouri to finish. Could be a really strong finish. If they finish with those 2 wins, I'd feel pretty good about this team going forward. I said last week, I believe, that I think Sam Pittman might just get the axe at the end of the year. Feeling a little bit better about that right now. I don't necessarily know anything one way or the other, and I still think it's very much up for debate, but I think he'll probably stick around for 2025. And then for Texas, this is a huge one to get. It was very, very close to slipping away, but made some huge plays down the stretch to win that game. You got Kentucky, and then that A&M game that could be for the SEC championship, could be for a CFP berth, could be for everything. And it would be 14 years or 13 years, since we've been able to see that. So cannot wait. It's going to be incredible to watch that one, but those 2 teams got to handle business before we get there. But a couple of games where it could have gotten absolutely crazy this past weekend if either of those games went the other direction, but Oregon and Texas were able to handle business. They were able to move forward and get a big-time win, but we'll take our second break here. When we come back, we got big conference wins all around the country. South Carolina, Clemson, as well as Arizona State, all got wins that keep them in the CFP hunt. Still got some ground to make up, but definitely big-time wins and keeps them at least in the hunt for a CFP spot. But we'll break it down right after this.